Welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Thomas Keenan coming at you today. And I've got my client, Mr. Chad Carlile, with us. And we're popping this dude's cherry. It's his first podcast, which I think is fucking awesome. I'm excited to bring him on here. He's a dude that I've got had a lot of conversations with, both personal, business, and I've watched this dude grow pretty rapidly over the past couple of years that I've known him, and especially realistically speaking, over the past probably 7 or 8 months is when I've seen some real massive skyrocket growth from this guy. And with that being said, man, I just want to welcome you to the show, and we'll get this thing rolling.
Well, Thomas, thank you very much for having me over here. It's nice to have a fellow Texan give a shout out and have me as a guest on the show. So,
even though I'm a transplant,
even though you're a transplant.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So look, we've been working together for a while. We've met each other in a different organization a couple of years ago, stayed connected. I kind of went out and did my own thing. You said, hey, raise your hand. We had a conversation and it just worked out. But what I've seen from you is the willingness to accept perception, right, from a third party.
Yep.
That actually has helped you in your business, your relationships in a bunch of different ways, probably more so than you ever anticipated.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The results have been overwhelming, especially when you take, advice and material and apply it. And that hadn't always been perfect. We're still not perfect.
Sure.
But as the old saying goes, we stepped it up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you some questions here, right? And for those who are listening who don't know Chad from Hole in the Wall, Chad got some cool businesses. He's got 2 companies. One of them, he's doing custom home AV, right? And I'll let you talk about that in a minute. And your other company, you have a partner in, and you're doing custom security and camera systems.
That's correct.
We have a lot of crossover just because of what I have done in the past. And coming out of the mobile electronics space, the 12-volt space, there's a lot of crossover in the way that you build those businesses, the way that you hire those technicians and team members to come onto your team. I think that's one of the reasons that you and I work so damn well together, is because we do have that commonality. Even though we didn't do the same exact thing, there's enough crossover for us to say, hey, cool, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're talking about. With that being said, talk to me a little bit about the point that you got to in your journey where it was like, oh shit, I need real help. And what did that look like for you? And at what point did you decide, like, what point did you get the balls to go and actually raise your hand and say, as a grown man who's a father, a business owner, a husband, at what point did you finally say, I need to raise my hand and ask someone for help?
When I was sitting behind the reception desk in our front office doing the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was doing reconciliations and paying the bills is when I knew. Mm-hmm. Because the lady that had done that before, we had to fire for some reasons. But the biggest thing with me was having accountability. That was, as a business owner, you kind of get off on your own venture, and sometimes being your own boss ain't being your own boss. And you're walking around stepping on your own eggshells. But having the accountability, it was a big thing, because a lot of times you can get out there and you think, I can put this on autopilot when there is no autopilot. There's no autopilot. And, your pipeline dries up, your employees are doing stuff that they know they're not supposed to be doing, and you just kind of bury your head in the sand. But my thing was the accountability, waking up and saying, this really is not working the way it's been. Even the last, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, not quite, but almost. And having somebody that had been there and done that, I think that's probably how me and you probably connected a little bit more. You told me a little bit about your backstory and some pretty intimate personal stuff. And, you think you're the only one out there in the world that's been or is going through what you're going through personally and through business. And, sometimes you just got to have somebody to come by and kick you in the nuts and give you a wake up call and find a new road.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I would say the majority of people who come in and want to work with me or just Step It Up Academy altogether, they come in expecting us to work on their business. And yeah, sure, that's what we do. We're going to help you see things you may not know. Like you don't know what you don't know. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but the other piece of the puzzle that I think shocks a lot of people is that it doesn't stop there.
No, not at all.
We have the ability to. I'm not saying this is my area of expertise, but so many times, and dude, you get this because of all of our conversations. But there's so many times in a relationship with what we have, like in a coaching client relationship, where one of the first things I'm asking you on a call is like, "Hey, man, how are you? I don't care about the business right now. I don't care about the other people in your life. How are you?" Because if we can't get you good, you can't get the business good.
That's right. And a lot of that flows with the 9-inch rule, or sometimes it's 6, but it's from this ear to this ear and everything in between.
Mhm.
And I use the term walking around on your own eggshells a lot because it starts right there, and that comes from having your own personal core values set in place, uh, and actually having your worldview and outlook of what's going on and what you think about yourself affects your marriage, then it affects your family, then it affects your circle of friends, then it affects your business, and it can get you on a downward spiral where it also will affect your health, and then that in turn will affect your business even more, and there is no business.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, man. I've personally had it affect my health on a couple of occasions where you get stressed out, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be stress from home, it could be stress from work, it could be stress from a combination of the two, and all of a sudden you're over there grinding. You got a busy schedule, 100 things going on. You're moving 100 miles an hour. You got phone calls coming in. You're fielding all this stuff. Clients are texting you. Employees are texting you. And all of a sudden it comes when you least expect it and it knocks you off your feet.
Yep.
That's happened to me realistically, like in a hard way, probably 4 or 5 times at this point in my adult life, where it's like, hey, it's like the man himself is coming over there and he's tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, buddy,
Yep.
hey, buddy, you need to slow down. And then when you don't listen, he just kicks you dead in the ass and knocks you flat in your back.
Had that happen too. Probably not as many times as you, but I've had that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, hey, you're not going to listen. I'm just going to take care of this for you. You need to rest. And I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling you, you're going to lay your ass down and going to be in bed for 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be. And oftentimes it's what we need. We need to slow down in order to speed up, as counterproductive as it sounds. We got to slow it down. We got to lay down. We got to kind of get into our own head and clear things up. So it's funny, man. Every time that I've pulled myself out of a situation, like, oh no, they can't do this without me. You're forced out of it, right? For whatever the reasons may be. You force yourself out of it, and then it's like, oh, they can do it without me.
Yeah.
And then the perspective changes, in my experience, to like, okay, well, since I know they're pretty good over there right now, what else can I go focus
Mhm.
on?
And that focusing on other stuff will allow you to expand. But having the ability to manage is great, but also having the ability not to micromanage is even better.
It's a fine line. You know it just as well as I do, right? Because there's some people, especially when they first start for you, where you've got to be a little bit more on the micromanage end of it. Like, hey, this is how we do things here. This is what I expect of you. But there comes a point in time where you've got to back away from those people and let their own inner genius come out, right? Because that's how you grow and scale a company. Well, one of the
It,
ways.
yes, you can, but uh, you know the thing in our industry is a generation gap, and you could hammer core values and this and that into them, but in these younger generations, it's even harder to do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. You could. It's like raising your kids almost because you could yell at them till you're blue in the face about being on time, lay it out how you want it, and it's like it doesn't sink in with them. So
Mhm.
at least that's what we deal with from time to time. So you have to constantly remind them of those things and remind them about where we're going, what we're doing, and why we're doing it.
Yeah. So when it comes to the reminding portion of it, I mean, to me, that the simple version of it sounds like a meeting, right? Going into your store and your shop, whatever term you want to use there. What does that look like for you and the team? How often are you getting together with your team and saying, "Hey, guys, this is the game plan. This is what we're going after. This is what we got coming up this week." What does that look like for you?
We try to do that pretty regular. Here recently, we've had a little turnover here at this office, and we've, including myself, have kind of been out in the field working. But there again, that takes someone admitting where they're lacking. But a lot of times, we'll either me or my business partner, we're working one on one with them. Me, not so much. I've either here in the office or out bidding jobs or doing other things, but at least a couple of times a month.
Mhm.
But the main thing is driving home that we need to be here on time. We've even gotten to where when they fill their timesheets out, to have a checklist of everything that they need before they even start their day, giving them every excuse to be successful in the realms of the install world.
Sure, sure. I hired a coach a couple years ago, and the way he explained it to me was, you've got to make your system for your technicians, and he called it a paint by numbers system.
Hmm.
Right. So you remember those books, those coloring books back in the day when you
Oh
were a kid?
yes, oh
Right.
yes,
Hey, if it's number 9, it's black. If it's number 2, it's red. He goes, that's how you have to dumb things down for your team who's coming in. You have to make it so super simple for them that they don't actually have to think, they just do. And it's just a methodology. It's one that I've tried to implement with the stuff that I got going on too. So when I bring people on, it's like, hey, we've already built the system here. We know it works. Yes, we're open to feedback to improve, to basically improving the efficiencies of the system. However, we're going to teach you how to use the system, and then we expect you to follow through with it moving forward.
right on.
Let's go back into the history of you a bit, sir. What was it that attracted you to home AV?
Short version or long version?
You you, you got an open floor here. Hit me.
I got into the AV world, first of all, being a drummer and a musician and guitar player. I always had a pair of sticks in my hand, was always strumming strings somewhere.
Mhm.
Grow up, met my darling wife, Mrs. Carlile. Started a job here locally at the old nasty Cooper Tire and Rubber Company here. Started in, I think, December of 03. Bought first house, typical, get married, have a kid, buy a house, start new, better paying job. Well, you were talking about the good man coming and hitting you in the gut.
Mm.
Not even a year into that job, it was a union job, and they said, "Well, guess what? We got contract negotiations going on, and we are going on strike." So we see 2,500 workers in their toolboxes, lunch pails, and everything walk out of the factory. And we were new house, new baby, haven't been married a few years, on strike, no job.
Mm.
So I worked with my dad for a little bit. He's in the elevator business, worked for him for a couple weeks. And I was like, this is not a business. When they say I want to be up and down in business, this ain't what I was talking about. But anyhow, uh, I'd reached out. Back then we didn't have Facebook, there was internet, but really not any big time internet marketing. So I just started blowing homeowners' phones up. I mean, I would drive around on Sundays after church, after lunch, and drive around to the new neighborhoods being built, drive out to some of the rural areas, and I had a legal pad, and I just would write down when I called, who I called, what their answer was, until finally a couple of them gave me a shot and started just wiring houses. No, wasn't selling any product, wasn't doing anything but just running wire.
Mm-hmm.
Then little 2 or 3 years later came along and flat screens and a bunch of other technology hit the market and started hanging TVs, doing a little bit more technical stuff. I had a helper. The other thing that really we got into was, Wi-Fi also hit our generation at that time as well. So, IT work bounced into our repertoire. And then by 2012, it was costing me money to go out there. And somebody told me a long time ago, when it starts costing you money to go punch a clock for somebody else, it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was going in at 3 a.m. in the morning and then getting off at 12. So I would drive one of the service vans out to the plant, clock out after my shift, take a shower in the locker room, and then from 12 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock every day for 2008 to 2012, it was doing that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Left in 2012 and hit the ground running. Hadn't looked back since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was too busy at that time learning the trade, learning the industry, making contacts, making connections, and never ever even thought about what we're sitting here talking about now. Because I ain't gonna say mastered it. I mean, there's always somebody better than you are, but for this area, I think I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the business side of it just kind of went to the wayside. I never thought I would be, in almost a 3,000 square foot building where we are now, with 4 or 5 other employees and 2 or 3 vans, and the phone never stopped. But the business side, I'm having to relearn that, and that's a kind of a hard pill. You have to kind of set your ego and your pride aside, especially just because you've been in it for as long as I have doesn't mean it's not all right to sit here and ponder and ask for help.
Yeah, you make some real valid points there, and there's overlap once again in our story. I don't know if you know this about me, right? But you said if the main squeeze, the job that you're going to is costing you money, it's time to leave. That's true as fuck. 2009, I I got married, and it was July of 2009. September of 2009, I left that job and went full bore into my GPS installation company. In that 2 month or so window, my ex-partner and myself had ramped up so much side work that the place I was working was a 1 hour drive away from my house with no traffic, and no traffic doesn't exist on Long Island. There's always fucking traffic. So that 1 hour drive is more like an hour and 20 minutes to an hour and a half each way. So picture the schedule. I'm waking up. I have to be at work by 9 a.m. every day. Okay. So I'm up right in order to make that.
Okay? Right in the heart of every traffic jam in the world, too.
Get there, work the day, and I'm the 12-volt manager. So I'm in charge of anything 12-volt that goes on in this shop. Anything electrical, anything audio, anything security, remote starts, audio, video inside the vehicle. Right, that's what I cover. And when I say I'm in charge of all of it, inventory, ordering products, paying the bills for it, getting the customers in, the marketing of it, the install of it, like you name it, top to bottom. Oh, and I'm also tech support.
I know the feeling on that one.
Yeah. I do it well. And I'm about 3 years into this job at this point too. We start ramping up side work. So now I work the day there. We work until, I want to say, 6 o'clock.
Now, explain. I know side jobs are kind of shop talk, but explain to everybody what quote unquote side work is.
The same damn work I did all day for someone else, I was going home to do for myself.
There you go.
Yeah. And because my ex-partner and myself, we both grew up and lived in the same town. We both had a lot of experience. We both had businesses prior to this. We had a lot of people who knew who we were and wanted us to do their work very specifically. Right? We had a reputation of quality and fairness. Okay. So I drive home. I get home by about 7 p.m., maybe a little bit later. I would go upstairs to my room. I would sleep. I would wake up at 9 p.m. I would eat some dinner, and I would drive a mile up the road to my ex-partner's house, and we would work until 4 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
And it was a brutal schedule, but it got to the point where people were dropping their vehicles off to us and saying, "Hey, here's 10 grand, here's 15 grand, here's 20 grand. I want this thing done." It was like, holy shit, these people want to pay us real money for not just, hey, this is a quick remote start or a quick security system, or hey, just put an amp and a sub in my vehicle. But no, we're talking a full-blown mobile audio system that's just built from the ground up. And I also like doing it. And here I got to go work the 9 to 5. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm done doing both.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I had my first business for 5 years. And when I was done with that business, I was burnt on small business ownership. I said to myself, I will never own a business again. I will never do this again. Like, I'm fucking done. Done. And lo and behold, 3 short years later, my whole mindset had shifted and I was ready to go do it again.
And you did.
I did. The second round lasted 11 years. And the only reason it didn't last any longer is because I decided to leave.
Yeah. Put a lot of groceries on your table, though, didn't it?
I did put a lot of groceries on the table. And I put a lot of groceries on the table for others too, because of the work that I had done. But the other thing that you were saying here was you had to push the ego aside and learn business.
Have to.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to quit, stop being a one-stop Johnny is what I call them. Because you'll have, I mean, you'll let other people put stuff on your plate without you even ordering it.
Oh yeah, all the time. So about 5 years in to that second business is when I had that realization. I was like, oh, there's more to this thing than just doing the work.
Yep.
Because my focus up to that point was installing and nothing else. Like if you asked me, hey, Tom, what do you do? I would never tell you I'm a business owner or an entrepreneur. I was like, yeah, I'm an installer. That's what I identified with.
Yep.
And there had to become a shift, a pivot, where I started working on me and learning more about life, learning more about actual business, not just the skill set needed to fulfill within the business.
Call that the worker bee mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're no different than me in that aspect. The only difference is I got a couple of years on you of working on the business and understanding that. Yeah. But that's the beauty of what we do. Is like, okay, cool. I went in there. I smashed my head against the wall for a bunch of years. Figured out what works, what doesn't work, right? And now you come and you hit me with, hey, I'm in this situation. I had this conversation with this person. Hey, this person popped this up in front of me. Hey, this customer wants this done. And when you come to me and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? Several times in our talks over the last couple of months has been like, hey, I'm not telling you what to do, but I've been in this exact situation before. And this is how it played out. This is what you need to look out for. This is what may happen. And if that doesn't happen, this is what's going to happen over here. And that perspective, in my opinion, has really helped you avoid some of the pitfalls that you may have experienced if we weren't working together.
Very much so. And not only the pitfalls, but there's been some greatness, especially when it comes to hiring and communication.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought some studs onto the team that have helped you tremendously. You know, you got Brittany with you now. Who's helping you in the office. Yeah.
See, that was a game changer out here. Mm-hmm. And I know she's listening, so I got to brag on her a little bit.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So she's been a breath of fresh air for sure.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's talk about the process of bringing her on, because when we first started working together, she wasn't with you, and that's we covered that before. You said, hey, I'm doing all this admin stuff, and I raised my hand, call for help. And one of the first things that we discussed, and I was like, hey, I got some action items for you, but you need to write down everything it is that you're doing. Like, go do that time study, figure out where you're spending your time.
Oh, man.
Stuff is.
Dude, that was brutal, Tom. That was brutal. That was embarrassing. But at the same time, God, that was hard, man. That was.
I told you it would be.
That was making me like, dude, I'd rather done burpees than do that again.
Yeah.
God almighty. But yeah, so we did I don't remember if we did the week or 2 week one, but either way, man, that was it was reconciling life's checkbook
Mm,
is basically for me is kind of what that was.
yeah.
Uh, that was a big time life reconciliation on the checkbook of,
Hmm.
of your time. We all get the same amount of seconds, and I'm sure you've heard it. And everybody, there's so many seconds that's deposited into your account, and how you spend it. And but the main thing is spending that on people, and you as a business owner or people, your person. And when you're too busy spending those minutes, seconds, and hours on other people, whether that be your family, your clients, your cell phone, and not spending that on you, I can tell the audience you will burn out and you will not like it,
Hmm.
and it does have consequences.
Oh, for sure. For sure it does. For sure it does. Shortly after that time study, you kind of figured, well, in my experience, it takes about 2.5, 3 days for you to really get the full kick in the nuts from the time study.
Absolutely.
Um, from that point moving forward, it changes your perspective because you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was spending all this time doing X, Y, Z, and it's different for everybody, right? And it's
Yes, it's going to be.
Mhm. But what the process there and how I leverage that is, hey, I need to make you aware of where you're wasting your time. And then from there, okay, what are the time wasters that are related to your business? And how do we turn them into a job description to go hire that person to help you?
Exactly. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. We got you a little organized. We put some processes in place. We started using task management inside ClickUp.
Yep.
And hey, this is how we do this. This is how we do that. And when Brittany came in, she had a system to use already. It wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm starting this from scratch. I don't know what Chad really wants.
Yep. Uh, that the click up, and I guess probably the technology on the back end is another thing that we're, because you get set in your ways of, far as scheduling, remembering stuff, and assigning. Used to it was, hey, I've got a text message here. Let me go back and find it. When did he say we were going to be there? And doing that 2 or 3 thousand times a day.
Yeah. And as you know, when you start studying the time, that's a waste of seconds, especially if that information was so the text message comes over, cool, I acknowledge it. I copy and paste that information over into wherever it needs to be in my software stack. I don't care if it's ClickUp, a Google Calendar, whatever it may be. That information gets transferred out of you because that's a device that you hold and own. And if you hoard that information, your team has no access to it.
There's no transparency, no communication.
Mhm.
And that was another thing that as you grow, you get used to using certain ways, and you get used to doing things your way.
Yeah.
And sometimes, more than often, your way is not the best way.
Mhm.
And when you become open to other ways, and you learn, and you're like, damn, this ain't bad after all.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. Just the way it is, man. What's next? What are the plans? What are you trying to do here?
Uh, we're we're still not struggling, but have speed bumps with a little bit of hiring, but we're going to get through that. We're we're looking to always grow just like any other business. But sometimes with growth, it can be a little scary. But you have to embrace the suck.
Hmm.
You have to.
Yeah.
Um, you have to allow a little breathing room for yourself. My biggest thing was, just not giving myself enough credit and constantly worrying, beating myself over the head with fear. But fear is false expectations appearing real. And man, that, you know, sometimes worrying about the small things when I need to be worried about the bigger things
Hmm.
has been uh, a battle that I just now at 42 ish, 41 ish, still deal with. And I think every business owner does, especially when you were, when you got others that work for you and they're out representing you, your brand, your not just you, but your business partner. and your family and his family, and you want everybody to do good, and most of the time they do. I can say that I've got a really good crew.
It's important.
But it's going to get bigger, and with it being bigger, on my side is probably holding people accountable more than often than I should.
Mm-hmm. I get
That's probably my kryptonite in the business world.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, man. And I kind of opened with it, but I'll say it again here one more time. I'm proud of you, proud of the work that you've done, because the Chad who showed up on my phone in July versus the Chad who shows up on my phone now is a
Yep.
completely different person. So keep putting the work in, keep doing your thing, keep showing up for your family, keep showing up for your team. And this is just the way it is, man. You're going to hit bumps in the road. That's part of business. But none of them are going to put you down, right? We kind of just break through the
Yeah.
barriers, we build up on them, we get better, and we go out there and we help people. It's simple as that.
Well, and also more so in your circle, which compared to some other circles that we've been in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's people out there every day going through the same thing. There's people going through the same thing, if not worse. And I don't know if it was Adam or Chris, not this past event, but the event where he had everybody stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And then before he did that, he said, I want you to write down on a piece of paper everything you're going through, personal, financial, business, everything. Wadded it up. He goes, this half of the room, throw it over here. This half of the room, throw it over there. And, you don't know whose handwriting. So you don't have your name on it, but there was I wrote down a few things, but so it had to be the female according to the handwriting. But I sat there and read it, and as everybody else was still, crumbling theirs back up to throw them away, I was still reading.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, my heart just wept for whoever this person was. But at the same time, I was like, I was blown away. But there's always, especially in the entrepreneur and the business world, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
We're not entrepreneurs without struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true.
And that's the whole reason that, I've put myself with you and in your mastermind, but just here locally at home, I've had to change. You are as good as the five that you hang around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But since July, man, it's been not a complete 360 or 180, but man, I'm on that home stretch. I appreciate, man, everything you've done. I've got an amazing staff here. My rock and foundation, Amanda, has, man, if it hasn't been for her, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. So I got to give her the shout out, and then of course, Mr. Jennings, my business partner, has been he's always there to help me get held accountable. So I've got good people in my corner going for me. I noticed you've got some good people over in your corner, and it's good to learn from others as well. Sometimes, the biggest mistake is not admitting your own.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to find your people and find the support you need. For some, that may come in the form of some support groups. Some do, Alcoholics Anonymous. Some do, business masterminds. Like, you got to find what works for you. And I'm not saying any one of those is right or wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But you got to go find people who are struggling or have been through some of the shit you've been through or are going through, because that just helps everything. It really does. And I was 35, almost 36 before I stumbled upon that. And I knew about it for a while, but it took me a good chunk of time to finally get the balls to go get involved.
Yep.
Yeah. I love it, man. So listen, we're wrapping this sucker up. if somebody wants to go do some work with you and get some cool shit for their house, security systems for their business, what's the best place to go connect with you?
2 ways. First way, AV site is Sounds Good Audio and Video. We're on Facebook at Sounds Good AV. Website soundsgoodtxk.com. That's SOUNDZ, good TXK. One good thing about the security side, we've kind of stepped out of going locally, and we were now regional. So that is for commercial and industrial, medical facilities, car lots, automotive, medical industries, primetech.txk.com.
Love it, man. Appreciate you coming in here, spending some time with me today.
Tom. We used to have a grocery store down here called Tom Thumb.
Mm-hmm.
My grandpa retired. Every time I hear Tom Thumb, I think of you.
Love it.
So anyways, thank you for having me. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on, Chad. Thanks.
You keep up the good work too.
I will.
Grind on, baby.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.